Today I'm going to show you how to install the new Xceed hard folding tonneau cover from Extang on this 2019 new body style Ram 1500 with a 5.5 foot bed. Let's go ahead and get started. Now if your truck doesn't have a drop-in bed liner, the first thing that we're going to do is install our bulkhead seal. It's going to install right to the inner edge, and it's going to go from one bed cap all the way down to the other side. Before we install that, we're going to use some rubbing alcohol and a paper towel, and we're going to completely clean the area and then let it dry for a couple seconds. Next, we're going to take our bulkhead seal, peel back a little bit of our backing, start at one bed cap, and we're going to work our way all the way down to the other side. Again, you want to make sure that that bulkhead seal is on the inner part closest to the inside of the bed. And again, if you have a drop-in bed liner, you do not need to do this step. And once we get it down to the other side, we're just going to trim it off. Once you get all the way down to the other side, you're just going to go back through and apply pressure all the way down. Next, we're going to grab our passenger side rail. At the top or the cab side, there's going to be a metal tab that's going to be facing the inside of the truck. It's going to have a slotted hole. You're also going to have a prop rod that's facing towards the inside of the truck. And at the tailgate, it's just going to be an open channel. Now, if we go to the back side, you're going to have a lip with a seal. That's going to sit on top of our bed cap like so. And then we're going to slide it all the way up until it touches the bulkhead. So now if you have a drop-in bed liner, you're going to need to notch a hole into that bed liner so that your rail can fit flush up against your bulkhead. Now with our rail touching our bulkhead, we're going to use a squeeze clamp in the center just to hold the rail into place, and then we can install our clamps. Now our kit is going to come with 6 pre-assembled clamps. You're going to have a bolt side like that and a nut side. Our nut side is going to be facing towards the inside of the truck. And if you open it up, you can see that there are teeth on the inside of this clamp. Now we're going to match those up with the slots on the inside of our rail. We want to make sure that those line up correctly. And now on our front clamp, we're going to slide it as far forward as we can. It's going to put it at about 6 inches from our bulkhead. We're going to go ahead and just tighten this up by hand until the clamp bites down a little bit, and then we're going to smack the top of the rail to seat it, and then we're going to take a 9/16 and tighten it down. Now our second clamp is going to look exactly the same as our first. We're going to install that right beside our second bracket, which is holding on our prop rod. We're just going to remove that, and it's going to install exactly the same way. Line up our teeth, get it to bite down, smack the top of the rail to seat it, and then tighten it down with our 9/16. And now our last clamp on this side is going to install about 6 inches from the end of the rail, and again it's going to install exactly the same way. Then we're going to repeat that on the opposite side. Next, we're going to install our drain tube. If you look at the end of the rail, you can see that there's a spout right here. We're just going to take one end of our tube, fit that up all the way, and then we're going to take the other end and run it out of a factory location. So on our Ram, since we have our bed rug, we've actually cut a hole right here where there is a factory hole, and we're going to run it right out of that. Then we're going to repeat all those steps on the opposite side. Now before we install our cover to our rails, we need to install the buckles onto the top portion of our tonneau. So that's going to be the small portion here. You're going to see 2 sets of holes, and that buckle is just going to fit right on top like that. Your kit is also going to come with these posts that have threaded inserts on the inside. That post is just going to go through the bottom, one on each side like that. Now with our buckle in place, we're going to use our provided screws and go down and through those posts. And then we're just going to tighten those down with a Phillips head screwdriver. And you want to make sure you do that on both sides. So now we're going to set our cover on top of our rails. You should hear it snap into place like that. You can fold our top panel over to make sure that we aren't too far in front of that bulkhead seal that we installed. Next, we're going to fold our front panel up. We're going to focus on the 2 slotted channels on the cover and the 1 slotted channel on the actual rail itself. We're going to take 2 provided bolts, slide them into those channels, and then line those up with the channel on the rail. You're going to put 1 bolt through the top channel and 1 bolt through the bottom channel. Now that we have our 2 bolts in on each side, we want to fold our panel back to the front and make sure that they rock into the slotted channel on each rail. Just like that. Now underneath the cover, you should be able to see where your bolts came through the slotted hole on the rail. The other side of those bolts, we're going to use a rubber washer and then a metal washer and a locking nut. We're just going to leave those loose for right now. We're going to do that on both bolts. And then repeat that on the opposite side. Now we can fully close our cover. We want to make sure that our latches engage at each fold. We want to make sure that the cover is evenly spaced from side to side. And then once we get all the way back to the tailgate, we want to make sure that our aluminum frame is just inside the tailgate. From there, we can open it back up carefully, making sure not to move it from side to side. And then we can go back underneath and tighten up our bolts. Now with our cover properly aligned, we're going to go ahead and take a 1/2 inch socket and tighten all 4 of our nuts down. Next we have 3 bump stops that we need to attach to the last panel before we use our prop rods. So they're going to go right here. We're going to get 3 of them, so they're going to be evenly spaced. We're going to do 1 right in the middle, 1 about right here, and then in this corresponding location on the other side. Before we attach those, we want to use our rubbing alcohol and wipe down the area just to make sure it's nice and clean. Next, we can remove the backing from our bump stops and put them in place. Make sure when you attach these that you apply a little bit of pressure. That'll make sure they adhere well. Then we're going to repeat that on the other 2. Now if your last panel latch doesn't connect properly with your rail, there is a way to adjust that. You're going to remove these 2 Phillips head screws at the top. Then you're also going to have 2 Phillips head screws at the front. Now with all your screws out, you can push the panel forward. The front can get captured sometimes, so you might just have to lift up on it a little bit, and then you can completely pull it out. Now with our cover off, you can see that there's 2 screws here that is holding on our latch. You would just have to remove those, adjust it, put it back in, and make sure it fixes your problem. Now ours is adjusted correctly, so I don't need to do that. I'm just going to put it back together. Then you reinstall your screws. Now, if you had to make this adjustment, you want to make sure that you adjust both sides. That's going to complete the installation. If you have any questions, give us a call or visit us online.